The Foro Italico was supposed to be a place of celebration. Instead, it became a scene of anger. Alexeala walked off the practice court expecting to greet the thousands of Filipino fans who had traveled from across Europe to see her. Instead, she found empty space where people should have been standing. The gates had been closed, security lines had been backed up for hours, and hundreds of her supporters, some who had flown from Manila, some who had taken days off work, some who had spent their life savings on this trip, were locked outside, watching from behind barricades. When Eala saw what was happening, her face changed. The smile disappeared, the composure that has defined her career cracked, and for the first time, the tennis world saw Alexeala angry.
Rome, Italy, May 2026. The Foro Italico, and a scene that should never have happened. The Roman sun was high, the clay courts were ready, but the chaos began long before a single ball was struck. Hours before Alexeala's scheduled match, the gates of the Foro Italico became a pressure cooker. Thousands of fans, many having traveled across continents, lined up to see their hero. As the crowd swelled, the security apparatus struggled to keep up. The line stalled, then stopped. Distant murmurs turned into shouts. Inside, Alexeala was preparing. Outside, her nation was being turned away. Children in red, white, and blue began to cry, separated from their idols by metal barriers and overwhelmed staff. The atmosphere shifted from festive to frantic. The Philippine consulate would later be alerted, but by then, the damage was done. The roar of the chants was replaced by the silence of empty stands inside the venue. For the first time on this European clay swing, the Eala effect was not drawing people in. It was being pushed out, and the resulting tension was palpable.
She has faced Grand Slam champions. She has played through the pressure of a nation. But when Alexeala learned her fans were locked out, something snapped. The practice session ended. Eala gathered her gear, expecting to walk into the familiar roar of Philippine flags and the thunderous Laban Alex chant that had followed her across Europe. Instead, she walked into a tunnel that led to a half-empty stadium. Her coaches were already on their phones. Team officials were conferring in hushed, urgent tones. The look on their faces told her everything before any words were spoken. The gates had been closed. Hundreds of Filipinos, some who had flown 7,000 miles from Manila, others who had driven overnight from Germany and France, were stranded outside the Foro Italico. Eala didn't scream. She didn't throw her racket. She went quiet. The stillness was more unsettling than any tantrum could have been.
The stadium was buzzing with the news of the locked gates. Security officials were scrambling. Tournament directors were being summoned. And Alexeala was done being silent. Let me take you inside the moment when the Filipina star confronted tournament officials face to face. The scene unfolded in a restricted corridor near the players' lounge, an area where cameras rarely venture. But someone was filming. Within hours, the footage would leak across social media, and the tennis world would see a side of Alexeala that no one had witnessed before. Eala, still in her practice clothes, her ponytail slightly disheveled, stood facing a tournament security supervisor. Her coaches, Joanne Bosch, Yuk Bauza, and Sandro Viene, flanked her. Her agent was on the phone, speaking rapidly in a mix of English and Spanish. Why were they locked out? Eala's voice was calm, but the calm was dangerous. It was the kind of calm that precedes an explosion. The security supervisor, a middle-aged Italian man in a navy blazer, stammered through an explanation. Overcrowding, safety protocols, fire codes, the standard bureaucratic language that explains nothing and everything. They traveled from Manila! Manila! Eala's voice rose. They took leaves of absence. They spent money they didn't have. And you locked them out? The supervisor had no answer. One of Eala's team members interjected, explaining that the tournament had underestimated the demand. Again, the same mistake that had happened in Melbourne, in Dubai, in Madrid. The same underestimation of the Eala effect. The same failure to prepare for the tens of thousands of Filipinos who would do anything to see their hero. Eala turned away from the supervisor. She walked toward the tunnel that led to the stands.
The team followed, unsure of what she was planning. She stopped at the entrance to the players' seating area. She looked up at the empty seats where the flags should have been waving. "This is not okay," she said. "This is not okay."
The tournament scrambled. The headlines spread. But for the fans locked outside the Foro Italico, the damage was already done. Within an hour of the confrontation, the Italian Open issued an emergency statement. The language was careful. Unprecedented demand, logistical challenges, sincere apologies to those affected. The tournament pledged to review its security protocols and promised that future sessions would accommodate the Filipino community's attendance. But the statement did little to calm the anger spreading across social media. Philippine news outlets ran headlines exposing the lockout scandal. OFW groups shared videos of families stranded behind barricades, children crying, elderly supporters being turned away after waiting for hours. The hashtag #LetThemWatchAlex trended worldwide within hours. Filipino fans who had traveled from across Europe gathered outside the venue not in protest, but in solidarity. They held their flags high. They chanted "Laban Alex," not from inside the stadium, but from the streets surrounding it. The sound carried through the Roman air, reaching the players inside. Eala, still in the locker room, heard them. Sources close to her team say she asked tournament officials if she could go outside to meet them, to wave, to thank them, to apologize for something that wasn't her fault. The request was denied for security reasons. She sat in silence for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and posted a single sentence on her Instagram story. No frills, no filters, just words that brought the OFW community to tears. "I see you out there. I'm sorry. Laban." The post was screenshotted, shared, and reposted thousands of times within minutes.
The Foro Italico fell into an uneasy silence as Alexeala walked onto the court for her second-round match. The Philippine flags were there, but not as many as there should have been. The chants of "Laban Alex" echoed, but they were thinner, the voices fewer. The hundreds locked outside had not been replaced. Their absence was a wound that would not close. Eala's opponent was unaware of the chaos, or perhaps she was. It didn't matter. From the first point, the Filipina played with a fire that had been missing in her early clay season matches. Her first serve was landing at 72%, a season high. Her movement was sharp, aggressive, fearless. "She's playing angry," one commentator noted. Not at her opponent, at the tournament. The first set ended 6-2 in Eala's favor. The stands, though thinner than they should have been, erupted. The flags waved. The chants grew louder. But during the changeover, Eala did not look at her coach. She did not study her notes. She looked at the empty sections of the stadium, the seats that should have been filled with Filipino flags, and her jaw tightened. The second set was a war. Eala's opponent, sensing the emotional volatility, fought back, pushing the set to a tiebreak. But Eala refused to lose. Not today. Not in front of the fans who had managed to get in. Not for the hundreds locked outside who could still
"I hear the roar of the stadium." She won the tiebreak 7-3. The match was over. The victory was hers. But as she waved to the stands, her eyes drifted toward the gates, where her people had been turned away. "This win is for them," she said afterward, her voice cracking. "They traveled so far. They gave so much. And the tournament let them down. I hope they know that I saw them. I heard them. I will never forget." The Italian Open was not prepared. The security lines crumbled. But the WTA, which sanctions the tournament, also faced mounting scrutiny. How could a top-tier event be so unprepared for the reality of Alexeala's popularity? In Melbourne, they put her on a court too small and thousands were locked out. In Madrid, they relegated her to an outer court, sparking outrage. And now in Rome, the gates had literally closed on her fans. The pattern was undeniable. It's the Eala effect, one analyst wrote. Tournament organizers keep underestimating her draw, and every time, the Filipino community pays the price. The WTA issued a statement expressing regret over the situation and promising to work with future tournaments to ensure adequate accommodation for all fans. But for the hundreds locked outside the Foro Italico, words were not enough. Eala's team reportedly discussed whether she should continue in the tournament. There was talk of a boycott, a statement that would force the tennis world to take notice. In the end, cooler heads prevailed. Eala wanted to play. She wanted to win. But the conversation revealed the depth of her frustration. Maria, an OFW from Milan who had been locked out, told a reporter, "I don't blame Alex. I blame the tournament. They knew we were coming. They knew how many of us there are. They just didn't care."
The sun set over the Foro Italico. The matches continued. The tournament officials returned to their offices, hoping the controversy would fade by morning. But outside the gates, the fans did not leave. They gathered in small groups, flags still draped over their shoulders, and sang. Not protest songs. Laban Alex. Over and over. The sound drifted through the Roman night, a reminder that some loyalties cannot be locked out. Eala, in her hotel room, watched videos of the gathering on her phone. Her mother, Ritza, sat beside her. Neither spoke. Finally, Eala whispered, "I need to do something for them." The next morning, news spread that Eala had requested a meeting with tournament officials. Not to complain, to propose a solution. She wanted the Italian Open to offer free tickets to the locked-out fans for the following year's tournament. She would pay for them herself if necessary. The request caught officials off guard. No player had ever made such an offer. But Eala was not like other players. "They are family," she said. "You don't lock out family." The tournament accepted Eala's proposal. The locked-out fans would receive priority access and complimentary tickets for the following year's Italian Open. Eala's team quietly covered the administrative costs. No press release was issued, no photo op was staged. But the OFW community knew. She didn't have to do that, Maria, the locked-out fan, said. But that's who she is. That's why we love her. Eala's run at the Italian Open continued. She advanced to the third round, the best result of her clay season. The Philippine flags waved. The chants echoed. But the memory of the locked gates lingered. The tennis world had seen Alexeala's power before, in Melbourne, in Dubai, in Madrid. But in Rome, they saw something different. They saw her protect her people. They saw her use her platform to demand accountability. They saw a 20-year-old who was no longer just a player. She was a leader. The gates of the Foro Italico will open again next year. The Philippine flags will wave. The chants of Laban Alex will echo off the marble statues. And the fans who were locked out will return, with tickets in hand, promises kept. But the question that remains is not about security protocols or crowd management. It is about recognition. How many times will the tennis world underestimate Alexeala's fans? How many more gates will close before the sport realizes that the Eala effect is not a novelty, it is a revolution? Eala has done everything she can. She has won matches, she has drawn crowds, she has spoken up when it would have been easier to stay silent. Now, it is the tournament's turn, the WTA's turn, the sport's turn. Will they adapt?
Or will they keep locking out the very people who are keeping tennis alive? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to SAT for more stories that go beyond the scoreline.
Hundreds of Filipino fans were denied entry to the Italian Open after security lines collapsed under the weight of unprecedented demand. Alexeala, learning of the lockout during her practice session, confronted tournament officials in a heated exchange, captured on video and later shared millions of times. The tournament issued an emergency apology, but the damage was done. Eala played her second-round match with visible anger, winning in straight sets and dedicating the victory to the fans locked outside. She proposed that the Italian Open offer free tickets to next year's event for those turned away, and quietly covered the administrative costs herself. The lockout sparked a broader conversation about whether venues are prepared for the Eala effect. The fans who were locked out have not forgotten. Neither has Alexeala.